They're gonna kill the love of my life.
David!
If I don't go back to what I was doing.
Our line of work is quite brutal and quite ruthless.
How far would you go for love?
You steal truck, bring it to me. Then you make your money.
Is it dangerous?
Of course it's dangerous!
Nicholas Hoult, Felicity Jones, with Ben Kingsley and Anthony Hopkins.
All this trouble, all this pain, for love.
Collide. Now playing. Rated PG-13. May be inappropriate for children under 13.
Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning, and welcome to Venus Unplugged, your virtual heartbreak hotel. This is your host, Llorraine Neithardt, and today we are going to continue on the four different eternal feminine archetypes that live in us. We usually have one stronger than the other, although at different stages of life, this archetype may be prominent. So today we're going to wrap up the Amazon, and then we're going to go to the MEDIAL. That's the woman who lives between the worlds. That's the seer, prophetess. So with the Amazon, which we discussed in the last 2 weeks, okay, the Amazon archetype, last week what I was working on was the difference between an authentic Amazon. She's born to compete, and she's born to grow. She doesn't get offended by the man's world. She sees the rules, and she plays by them, but according to her nature. So it's the masculine. Very often this Amazon type has a very strong animus. Her inner male is very well developed. So it's different than, because men and women think completely different, which is why we have heartbreak. And this show is all about exploring, what's going on inside of us, because that's what's running the show. And the more we know about these archetypes and this inner kingdom, the more we can understand what is happening to us. Because whatever we don't know about ourselves returns to us as fate. We are continually spinning our story, our own sense of self. We're constantly in this state of true, authentic drama, the unfolding of whoever your soul really is. And this takes thousands of years. So we're somewhere between here and eternity, so don't get nervous if you don't understand this stuff immediately. So what we're going to work with now here, here's a quote from Uncle Carl Jung, okay? The modern woman stands before a great cultural task, which means perhaps the beginning of a new era. Amen, Uncle Carl. That is true. And that's also the feminine in men, because they're working hard. They are really, and they're working hard on what's their authentic masculinity. And that's noble. So we're all in it together. Now, what Tony Wolff writes about the Amazon is independent of the male because her development is not based on psychological relationships to him. Now, that's huge. The mother type and the Hatara type do depend on their relationship with the male or with others, okay? A true Amazon doesn't. That's not what motivates her, okay, to please or, she competes. She loves to compete, okay? Relationship with the man is through a role of being competitor or comrade who makes no personal demands, who deserves to be taken seriously and who incites his energies and inspires his best ambition. So she meets the male and the patriarchal world. She knows the rules. She makes a few of her own, and she stands by them, toe to toe, which is very different when the wounded Amazon, that is when the woman is coming from a wound or her rage at the patriarch, but isn't authentically in her Amazon energy, because the Amazon knows, I got I got it covered. This is who I am. This is who I'm born. This is what I'm about. So the status of her married life, her partner means little, so she doesn't really get upset whether she gets married or doesn't get married, okay? She wants to earn her own laurels, okay? Doesn't want to be taken care of. And that's very important to understand. Her energy may evoke admiration and attraction within the male. She's customarily efficient and successful. Her family members may often be her employees. She very often is very brave, and she likes physical adventures, and she travels in sports, and they like all this type, along with the highest level of participation in business, politics, and every level in public life. So they love to compete. They don't feel inferior. They know that they know they have this energy in them. And the healthy Amazon does not need to be taken care of. She may wish to participate in a healthy adult relationship of give and take, wherein she can give and take human love. Her shadow aspect is fear of vulnerability or being needy. That flips her out. But we all got a shadow. And if we don't know what our shadow is, it's going to trip us up one day. Or we're going to act it out and not even know what's going on, or we're going to protect it or project it onto somebody else, and then that means they get all that fabulous golden power that is in your shadow, and you're giving it away. You need it. You need to distill it. It's black gold. That's one of the most important parts in alchemy. But they say the shit is in the gold, and the gold is in the shit. In that dark, icky part of us, therein lies the authentic force. And that's part of what consciousness is. It's about becoming aware of what we don't know about ourselves, not projecting it onto others, or if we do project it, to know, like, ooh, that doesn't look good on them. That actually belongs to me. And we need that energy. So the Amazon is the principle of empowerment. So that's who you're going to call on. We all have an aspect of that. Some women work, it's natural for them to be the Amazon. Other women have to work harder at it. So this is all we're looking at. We're just looking at these different, refining our understanding of the complexities of the inner world and its divinity, because these are our connections to our divine powers. So the hard task, for those who wish to take it, is write a letter to your Amazon, the one you need help from, where you need to be strong, not out of fear and anger, but out of the strength of vulnerability. The strength of vulnerability, because when you're authentically vulnerable, there is enormous power in that. Nobody can get you. They can't get to you. That's how powerful that is. They can try to shame you, and they can try to make you feel guilty, but when you're vulnerable, no, there's great strength in that. And it's one of the things that, once again, the shadow will very often, what we don't know about or what we think is weak or wrong, okay, very often is an enormous, enormous ally or strength that we've been shamed that isn't right, and the culture, because the job of the culture is to repress a lot of things so we kind of get in line, all right? But as adults, and especially in the nature of the heart, see, because the heart is courage, heart rage, wisdom, to love deeply, no matter what. And that takes a lot of moxie, baby, to love deeply. Most of all, to love yourself as truly the self, shadow and light, the whole enchilada. It's like, we have things we would like it to be a little different or better or wiser, but, we're not always there. And that's valuable, too. That's why we have evil in fairy tales. It's always pointing to what we need to understand. And remember, evil is live spelled backwards. So there's always a hint there. So with this Amazon, we are going to, that's going to be the hard task if you so wish to take it, and to write a letter to the Amazon in you, or get a picture of Pallas Athena or any one of the Amazon figures, the great queens, Queen Elizabeth, even, and get her strength. Ask her for her advice. That's what, an active imagination. Have a dialogue. It will answer. She will answer, because it's all there. And let's see what comes up, because you do have the strength. Or she has the strength, and she's the one in you that has the strength. So, and the beautiful part of the authentic Amazon, when it's really from that nature, as I said, she doesn't need to be taken care of, so she's very rarely the victim. That's not one of her part of her repertoire. It's not, look what was done to me, okay? It's like, really, really, guess what? I am who I am. And you better step aside, because I have my own strength. And she doesn't fear. I mean, she's not ruthless. She relates. She stays related, but she's not dependent on people loving her or liking her. She's not dependent on relationships like the mother, the queen mother type, and the Hatara. Their essence is about relatedness. So then the Amazon and the MEDIAL woman, that's not about relatedness. That's more archetypal. There's a quality of otherness. It's from a different realm. And as I said, at different stages in our life, we carry this. Or we can see, oh my God, instead of playing victim, which gets tired, okay, unless, God forbid, there really has been a victimization, okay? Because essentially anything that has happened to us in childhood is kind of the theater of psyche, and we have to heal it. They're not going to heal it. They were just sent to do the wounding, but we're going to do the healing. And then once we earn that, you see, it's very interesting about wounding, because when we've been wounded or we grapple with something, we have an issue, a problem. When we fight with that angel and get the name of that energy, then we can heal, which is very interesting. So if you've had a lot of psychological problems, okay, always overcoming or anorexia or whatever it might be, when you begin to work with that, you know the name of that demon. And then you can help others who are wounded in that way. That's why some people are good at healing one thing, and if we've had the experience and we've moved through it and we've battled with it, we have the right to heal that. Otherwise, we really don't. It's just like you wouldn't go to a therapist that has never been analyzed. They're going to ask you to go to hell and they haven't been there? I wouldn't be doing that. Be like, have you been to hell? No? Well, guess what? I'm not going. I'm going to go with somebody who's been there. Because that's what it's about. We all need to go through these rites of passage because it is about refining. You see, and part of it is the colossal journey of human love is to bring back the essence to the gods, or to the God, or whatever way you want to your inner world works. Okay, and part of what we've been working with this active imagination, because eventually when you understand active imagination and how to get opposites, you'll then begin to understand how to pray. Because usually we pray that we think we're right. God, please give me this. Or Goddess, please give me this. Or I want this because I'm right and they're wrong. And it's one-sided. It's only half of the equation. With true prayer, we present opposites. You know, I love this person, and they can't love me back. Love and unrequited love, okay. So you present that, and not please make them love me, but just present the story, both sides, equally. One isn't right and the other isn't wrong. That's not opposites. That's an argument. When you present that and you get the handle on that tension of the opposites, then you're in the grid. And then that is presented to the divine, because you don't have a right to tell the divine what to do, or that you know better. You present it, those sides, and the divine will then shift the consciousness whatever way is necessary. And then also, you don't have that, like, icky karma that has to do with, because we don't ultimately know. We can suspect, we can have an instinct. So the art of prayer is very, very powerful. And we are beginning to evolve enormously, all right? And so therefore we can take on the responsibility of authentic prayer. Not as children, please give me everything I want. But this is the story. Please guide me in the wisdom, and I will honor that. And it's amazing what happens when you can do it that way. But that takes a lot of consciousness. So I'm just suggesting that. So now we're going to be moving on to the MEDIAL woman. Don't you just love that name? The MEDIAL woman she's the one, she's really the part of us. Like Persephone is one of the, which I will go over next week, the goddess Persephone, because very often she is the MEDIAL. She's the healing one. She's the psychic. But I'm going to give you a quote from Tony Wolfe. The MEDIAL woman is immersed in the psychic atmosphere of her environment and the spirit of her period, but above all, in the collective, impersonal unconscious. The unconscious, once it is constellated and can become conscious, exerts an effect. The MEDIAL woman is overcome by this effect. She is absorbed and molded by it, and sometimes she represents it herself. She must, for instance, express the act of what is in the air, or what the environment cannot or will not admit, but what is nevertheless a part of it. It is mostly the dark aspect of a situation or a predominant idea, and she thus activates what is negative and dangerous. In this way, she becomes the carrier of evil, but that she does is nevertheless exclusively her personal problem. Okay, so the witch gets projected onto her. How could you know that? You must be a witch. Okay. As the contents involved in the unconscious, she lacks the necessary faculty of discrimination to perceive and the language to express them adequately. The overwhelming force of the collective unconscious sweeps through the ego and the MEDIAL woman and weakens it. By its nature, the collective unconscious is not limited to the person concerned, and further reason why the MEDIAL woman identifies herself and others with archetypal contents. But to deal with the collective unconscious demands a solid ego consciousness and an adequate adaptation to reality. As a rule, the MEDIAL woman disposes of neither, and consequently, she will create confusion in the same measure as herself is confused. Conscious and unconscious, I and you, personal and impersonal, psychic contents remain undifferentiated. And objective psychic contents in herself and in others are not understood and are taken personally. She experiences a destiny not her own, as though it were her own, and loses herself in the ideas which do not belong to her. Instead of being a mediatrix, she is only a means and becomes the first victim of her own nature. Pretty intense, right? So what the heck does that mean? So the MEDIAL woman, well, I certainly can relate to that. Especially as a young woman, these forces would come in. I didn't know what I was seeing. So naturally, who was crazy? Me. Why am I feeling this? Why isn't anybody else feeling this? What's going on? And she's somewhat of a mystery, this type, okay? Because she is connected to these impersonal forces, the collective unconscious. She knows something's going on, and unless she learns the language, and unless she becomes really strong in her sense of self, her wholeness, you know, it just sounds like a bunch of gibberish. So this woman, the psychic, the seer, these are the type of women, if she's not, in my own case, through a series of events, starting with a near-death experience when I began to realize, like, whoa, something's going on here. I went into analysis when I was 17 because I just didn't get it. There were things I was feeling and knowing. Now, of course, I chose Freudian, or it chose me, and that didn't help much. Other than, you know, I was on a path, and then somebody told me about astrology, and I went and had an astrology reading and learned more in an hour and a half than years in analysis. And that wasn't the right one for me anyway, but at least it got me aware that the unconscious is informing everything. But these forces, and it wasn't until I went to a psychic, and then she kind of carried on about me being psychic, and it was like, yeah, right, lady. But it got through. And for 7 years, I had occult training. You know, these invisible forces, the way metaphysics, occult, all of that. And then from there, so I was glad I did that first, or that I was guided to that first, because that taught me all about this invisible, that it really, everything does mean something. And I was able to start differentiating, so it wasn't just being flooded by feelings and emotions. And, you know, it took me years to figure out that people lie. It's like, why would you lie? You know, this is what they do. Fearful, whatever it is. And then from there, I went into my Jungian training, and that lasted 25 years because it was training through my own inner work and dreams. So it was a very good combination because I was always nervous or terrified, actually, that I would project my own content or my own craziness or my own shadow onto others, and that I couldn't live with. Once I began to realize that I could handle that, and your body has to get stronger, and it's truly one initiation after another. You know, most people wouldn't choose this. They have a romantic idea of what it's like to be a mediatrix or a seer, but it's essentially what's happening is archetypal forces are at your back. They're inhuman. You're not whispering sweet nothings in your ear. All right, and you need to take those energies and transform them into a cohesive symbol, okay, or sentence, and mirror it and give it to the person in a way. So you're going through many alchemical steps to guide someone in what they do, what they don't understand, and you're helping them connect that. So the aha moment can occur. Now, that aha moment may take 10 years. That people call me like, oh, yeah, for 7 years I hated you. And it's like, gee, thank you for your prayers. And now I get it. Wow. Okay, cool. So this MEDIAL woman, or as I said, she's with the impersonal forces. So it's not her personal gig that's going on. So very often she is a mystery to herself as well as to others. If you're in some company, people will project the witch. Let you know that she must be a witch. Okay? The negative feminine. And it takes a lot of consciousness, observation, building a strong container, a healthy ego that knows the difference between your stuff and the archetypal stuff. Or very often I see this with clients. They're incredibly psychic, but they're like sponges. They just take everything in. And so they can't tell the difference between the devil and the deep blue sea, okay? So this type very often is a puzzle to herself and an enigma to those she encounters, because her primary relationship is to the other, to the unknown, to the god or gods. Like when I was a kid, I was in religious instructions. I could see Jesus. He was like blue. He was really darling. But I went to religious instruction. I went to public schools. I didn't go to Catholic school. But I loved the stories. I just loved the stories. And then the nuns would be saying something, and I'd be going, like, putting my head up and down, like, oh, okay, okay. And then I'd look over to my right, and there would be, like, this blue figure, who I assumed was Jesus, because it was the only blue figure in the room. And he'd be going like, no. He'd be shaking his head like, don't take that in. He'd be like, oh, okay, I won't do that. Thank God I'm a Gemini, because that could have gotten you crazy. I was like, no, okay, I get it. And as a kid, I could feel like, you know, that sounds like something man made up. It doesn't sound like something. It was like an intuitive. I couldn't explain it. I mean, that's why when one has is intuitive by nature, they drive sensate people crazy, because it's like, give me the facts, man. Like, where are you coming up with this? It's like, I don't know. You just leap. You make a quantum leap. You know, it's like you got T-Mobile behind you, all these invisible forces that are yelling and screaming and pushing and prodding. Okay, and you know, you're the vessel. So I'll be giving you examples in different MEDIAL women. Some went off into cloisters and nunneries and became famous women and MEDIAL women and great connections to the divine. So it's more or less like the divine is a local call. It's not long distance. But you have to figure out the language, because these are very high frequencies that are coming through, and which is why it's very easy to lose your cookie from these forces. And especially when we're in a culture, I mean, it's better now, but if we're in a culture that doesn't believe in the invisible, that child is going to suffer. And being able to differentiate what is authentic vision as opposed to fantasy. So it is very important to know thyself, okay? And we're going to go through the archetype of Persephone, who is the healer and the visionary. And then some famous women in history like Madame Blavatsky, Russian mystic. And that what these women gave and what they're about. And when we begin to understand what this archetype is about and how to work with it, or at least suggest ways that we can work with this, it makes a big difference. Or when do we need to call on that? Or when what are we? Is that your true nature? You know, because the MEDIAL's woman task is to communicate her perception to the world. And the origin of this perception is non-rational. She knows, but she doesn't know how she knows. It just comes. And it takes a lot of staying awake. Can't go to sleep with her. So, you know, and the thought process of the MEDIAL woman may often seem so strange to others that they kind of like back away, or they make a joke out of it, which actually hurts them greatly. Like Cassandra. Cassandra was a MEDIAL woman, right? She was given the gift of prophecy, but then she pissed off Apollo, and he said, okay, I can't take the gift away that I gave you, but I'm going to make sure nobody believes you. So how often does that happen? So I'm going to leave you hanging with that one. The Queen Mother has told me I've got to bounce now, and next week we will continue with the goddess Persephone and the MEDIAL within. Have an absolutely glorious week. Actually, have a glorious life. Take care. Next week. Bye.
You're gonna kill the love of my life. If I don't go back to what I was doing.
Our line of work is quite brutal and quite ruthless.
How far would you go for love?
You steal a truck, bring it to me. Then you make your money.
Is it dangerous?
Of course it's dangerous!
Nicholas Hoult, Felicity Jones, with Ben Kingsley and Anthony Hopkins.
All this trouble, all this pain, for love.
Collide. Now playing. Rated PG-13. May be inappropriate for children under 13. Collide. Now playing. Rated PG-13. May be inappropriate for children under 13. Collide. Now playing.